This conference will now be recorded.
I'm going to start the meeting. I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, September 20th meeting of the Monmouth City Council. And we will have the roll call, please, Phyllis.
And we would like the conference in if the taxpayers are paying.
Councillor Bell is excused. Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez is excused. Councillor McKeel.
Here.
Councillor Oberst.
Yes.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros.
Here.
Mayor Coons.
I am present. I'm going to ask you to please be quiet because we're conducting our business.
Well, you need to answer my questions.
I don't actually have to answer your question.
Actually, you do.
I'm going to ask you to call the city manager. She is.
And who's the city manager and what's her phone number?
Marty Wine. She was here last week. She is out of the office this week. If you contact her Monday, I'm going to ask you to leave because you are disrupting our meeting.
What is her number?
Our attorney's here. He'll be glad to let you know that I'm going to ask you
to. Fine. What's her phone number? You just told me to call her. What's her number?
Monday. I'm going to ask you to call her Monday.
And what's the number?
I don't have it on me. I'm going to ask you to leave. You're interrupting our meeting. We need to conduct our business.
You are refusing to answer. I got here before the meeting started.
I'm not refusing.
Yes, you are refusing.
This is our meeting. I am asking you to leave.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McKeel, if you'll lead us in the flag salute, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you for the beautiful photo, Phyllis. Our consent calendar tonight consists of our meeting of September 6th. That was included in your packet. If you have any changes or additions to make, let us know. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst for the motion and Councillor McKeel for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great, thanks. Tonight, as mentioned, we just have a few things on a work session agenda, kind of a light evening, but we wanted to get a chance to discuss these things. Our first thing is actually a report from our finance director, Janet Chenard, and looks like we're going to get the sort of pre-audited final numbers in for our fiscal year that ended June 30. So take it away, Janet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Yes, we are looking now at pretty close to finished June 30th numbers. I know it feels funny because it's already September, and probably in late October, early November, you'll be seeing the first quarter of fiscal 23 report already. There is a lot of work going into these numbers this year, however, which is one of the reasons it's been delayed, and there are still additional entries to make, especially with regard to urban renewal, which is a fast-moving item, especially with, as you're aware, we've been working on a substantial amendment, so there's a lot of ducks to get in a row and balls in the air and so forth, but I feel pretty good about these numbers, and I hope you had a chance to look at them. If you take a look at my chart, you'll see a lot of green, which is always a good thing, right? And from that perspective, everything came in as expected or a little bit better. And so the only, even the yellows that I have are not unexpected. Those are the fines and forfeitures, which we know continue with our police staffing to be and different priorities to be something that we haven't necessarily hit targets, but they're not targets. So we don't rely on that revenue to support the general fund. And then the only other yellow that I would bring to your attention is the gas fund. We we struggled at the end of the year. As you know, we did a second supplemental budget to try and stay ahead of the price increases, and we made it with $1,300 or $1,279 to spare. So that was a good thing. So we didn't break any budget laws. But yes, it's going to be interesting to see how this year goes, and hopefully we've built enough in, and as prices start to go down, things will regulate themselves. But we do have some capital expenditures that we want to do in that fund, so we may, again, in fiscal 23, be coming in with a supplemental budget and maybe looking at a slight rate increase or margin increase because, as you know, we have several other customers, external customers that we sell our gas to, and that will give us a little bit more capacity to make sure that our infrastructure is in good shape. The other green fund that I wanted to draw to your attention was the tourism fund. As you know, obviously with the pandemic, we haven't been able to do a lot in tourism spending wise. And the good news is that our lodging recipients or our lodging taxes from our hotels and VRBOs in the vicinity are doing relatively well. We came in quite substantially over budget. Of course, we were very conservative with our budget, but also higher than the previous year, as we would expect as we start to come out of the pandemic. And so the only other thing, hopefully, like I said, if you had a chance to look at the rest of the results, the other funds are pretty much as expected, but I did want to draw your attention to the investment report, interest and investment report on page 24, just to say, as you all are aware, interest rates are going up, and they are going up. And so while I had hopes of getting a safety, a safe box, what are they called? Safekeeping institution put in place so that I could do some outside investing. It turns out that the LGIP is actually not lagging the market as much as it normally would. And so we're still in pretty good shape as far as interest rates go. We don't, of course, rely on our interest income, but we ended up the year pretty much at the same level that we did last year. But I think FY23 will probably outperform FY22 based on these ever increasing rates. So those were really the only highlights that I wanted to bring to your attention. I will say that we have used our American Rescue Plan monies even further than we had anticipated through the end of the year, because we had to file a report at the end of April and had at that point spent about $340,000. And we've moved more of our ARPA funding into the various funds where the money is being spent. And so you'll see that your water fund, for example, looks pretty good because we've been able to backfill with ARPA funding for that, as well as your street fund on the projects that were contemplated being covered. So I think that's all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'd welcome them.
Hi, Ms. Chenard. Thank you so much for the report and for all the work you're doing on this. I'm just curious. I see that Winnipeg is still listed, and that is just pure curiosity for me.
Right. So for June 30th, I still have to report on Winnipeg, but I took it out actually this afternoon out of my August reports. And so, yeah, and from a budget law standpoint, I actually have to continue to present it in the budget for an additional 2 years after we close it for activity. But I don't have to do it for the quarterly report, so you won't see it anymore in your quarterly report going forward. But it will be audited this fiscal year and then not next fiscal year. Good question.
No, thank you. I wasn't concerned. I was just curious. So thank you for answering it.
Any other questions or comments? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Janet. Good work as usual. Just a couple of questions, and they don't really relate necessarily so much to the numbers, but under the fines and forfeitures, you reference there, that while we're doing well, we're 76% of budget due to police staffing and service priorities. I guess I'm unaware of our staffing issues. And that's only to say that perhaps we ought to have if we have a personnel change that's going to impact budget, it might be a good idea for that information to be shared. And while service priorities are not necessarily our purview, I guess we might just want to work at ways to get continued information from our police department, because I know we're all proud of it and we talk about the good things they're doing, and it would be nice to be fully informed in that. So perhaps that's just a pass it on, maybe. Nothing that requires action, but sort of a pass it on. And then I read 2 or 3 times and the MyNet situation, certainly positive. But the October, December debt payments, are we paying those quarterly now? Because that looks like a quarterly deal.
Well, no, it's because when I restructured the 2021 debt and the 2017 debt, I moved it to an April and October timeframe. So traditionally pre-me, all of our debt was structured to happen in June and December. And I preferred to have a smoothing out of those debt service payments as one aspect. And then sometimes you can get a slightly better rate if you time it to be off with what everybody else is doing. And so I restructured it for the April-October timeframe, and then actually did achieve, according to our investment advisor, a better rate. So so it's not exactly quarterly, it's just every 6 months when they're due, which happens to be 4 months of the year.
So what was once December is now October.
Correct, for some of them, yes. So we still have some June, December payments for some of our issues, but yes, we have some that are now falling due in April and October.
Okay. And then if we could just switch to the spreadsheets, if we could.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little, it just requires explanation because I'm confident that it's there. If we look at Fund 10, right at the top,
okay,
we've got a current year budget item for our fund balance of $4.6 million. Actually, we're at $1.7 million.
That's because a portion of that, so you'll notice that we issued our $3 million in debt proceeds this year, and last year we thought we would issue it before June 30th for our capital. Since the bond passed in May, we thought we might be issuing right away, and so to be conservative, we budgeted that we would receive that $3 million in the previous. You know how the budget lags a bit, right? And so we anticipated having that $3 million sooner than we did, and we ended up issuing in August. So you see that if you look at the bottom line of Fund 10, that we're at $4.5 million as of current year because of having gotten that $3 million in August instead of in June.
Gotcha. Okay, I'd forgotten about the $3 million deal, and the 1.7 tracks, comparatively with the June 21. So that makes sense. I'd forgotten about that. So good one. The other thing is I went through and you were it mentioned several times in your in your summary that the revenues are in ahead of projections and expenditures are tracking below budget. And that's all well and good, but we're all interested in utilizing the money that we get efficiently. And as I look down our expenditure columns on almost all of our different funds, we're at 90%, we're at 100. We may be a little one might be at 50, but there's a reason. So that 90% spending on on what we anticipate, that's good budgeting and good. And the fact that they're able to come in under that sometimes, that's fine. But we don't want to be budgeting ridiculously high and spending ridiculously low. So, that 90% and change up and down that expenditure column was good to see. And it's a kudo to all the people that manage individual budgets. So sorry for taking so long, but good on you.
Well, you've got a good team in your department heads. Full kudos to my colleagues.
Great observations, Councillor Carey. Anybody else? Anything else catch your eye that needs a little explanation? All right. Those being, again, the unaudited numbers. We'll be seeing a full report on that later, but with all of the additional funding, ARPA and everything else, and we didn't get to go out and hire a whole new team of accountants to take care of that, or the bond, for heaven's sake. So really appreciate getting this, and grace given for any delay that you may perceive, but really appreciate it. Janet, thank you very much. All right. So I added a couple of other things this evening just for discussion, and in your packet, Phyllis provided us a timeline for annual reviews of the city attorney and city manager. And those were last conducted a while ago. So we want to be sure and try to get ourselves back on track this year. And for that track, we have typically done the city manager evaluation sort of starting in October, where we talk about the evaluation form. We make sure that we are discussing or measuring the things that are meaningful to us to be able to provide feedback to our city manager. And then once we determine the form is what we want, hand those out, get those back in early November. Typically in our old fashion, the mayor and council president sort of reviewed those, saw if there were any anomalies or comments or things we needed to follow up on, and then prepare that. So in December, we could let the city manager know where we were going and how we were all getting there together. And then the city attorney, we start that process at the beginning of the year. So also, then Phyllis sent out the format, the forms that we used last time we did this. And if you recall, last time we did this, I created a Google survey for everyone to complete so that it would collect the scoring and comments. And I think one observation, sort of, if you look at both of them, remember we really made a significant change to the city manager evaluation. Rather than trying to do a rubric, figure out some scoring ranges, some Likert scale responses, and then a little bit of room for comments, we changed the city managers to really be comment oriented, observation oriented. What signs of effectiveness did we see, and if there were any concerns, to note those. So the first thing I would be interested in is a little bit of discussion about our city manager evaluation. Do we want to make any changes to that? And maybe, I don't know, Lane, if you want to hear this or not. Talk about, yeah, if we want to go to a similar format. So rather than trying to do sort of this number evaluation, if first of all, we wanted to change the format to really just be an opportunity to comment about either things we observe that we think are, good and positive and support us in doing our work versus, gee, this one thing came up or I had questions about this. So how do folks feel about that? First of all, the overall format. Just chat amongst yourselves. I'm not going to call on you.
So I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I think I missed the numbers on the city manager evaluation form, but that's me. I know, Cease. I know. That said, I also appreciate the attempt to make it more of a narrative evaluation. I think it's harder to do. It takes a greater investment on our time, which is not a complaint. It's simply an observation. I'm wondering about a hybrid. Can we have some categories that are quick and dirty? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Quick and dirty numbers, in other words.
Thoughts about that? Go ahead. I won't call on you. Just go ahead and let's have a discussion, John.
John, that one of the and there is comfort in numbers, I suppose, for a scientist, but for a social scientist, I prefer no numbers. Because if you use numbers, you need to define what that number value is. And you and I disagree on what a 3 is. A 3 is doing the job they're supposed to do. But you, a great inflation guy, that would be a 4. So, there we have it,
That's the difference between hard science and soft science, John.
Yeah, stipulate. Absolutely. But one of the other things that I thought about, and I'm going to say that I really like this model, Cease, that you're asking for here, because if we I'm just thinking about how I would write the evaluation to the city manager. And I would be able to take comments, thoughtful comments from, my own and counselors. And I'm not going to be doing this, but I'm thinking about it. And I can write a crafty narrative that would describe our feelings about the performance of that city manager. And I wouldn't say, well, you were like 2 above the average on this one. And, and all that. It would be a soft science, admittedly. But to me, it would be more a better communicative tool. So I like it, and I acknowledge your reservations, Councilor Oberst.
If you can't measure it, John, it's not worth counting.
Well, I'll tell you both, right?
Whoa.
My discipline is the dismal science. As an economist, all your numbers are relative. So there you go.
Yes, I just wanted to say I really do appreciate this model because you're not just having making comments, but you can also give specific examples, and you can and really expand on that and highlight that. And I think that's important because sometimes the numbers can be a little vague and sometimes the comments are a little vague. But I think for evaluation purposes, I like the examples, and I like somebody telling me directly, this is what we saw that you did well, and this is what we saw that, and with more specifics. I work under the premise, if I don't know, I can't do anything about it. And so so I do like the model, because if we don't know, then we can neither improve or do nothing. Like there's no room for that. So I do appreciate the model that we have to be able to make any type of adjustments or changes and have that robust discussion.
I just have to agree with the brilliance of Councillor Carey and Councillor Salinas Oliveros. And I'm sorry, Councillor Oberst, that you have difficulty with gray areas of numbers. But when I also really liked the prompts, or these are the things we're looking for in each of the categories. The only thing that I wonder is if we could add more purposefully, more equity and inclusion focus on that. I know that it's there for item 6, but I think there's merit in having it within each of, and actually I looked at number 2, number 3, and number 5, where I think equity and inclusion could help us actually focus more purposefully on our own city's vision statement.
Oh, and I had a thought about that. And that is potentially, I mean, obviously we want to see all 3 of our values reflected in the work of our city manager, not just our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that might be, you know, a way to add to each piece, right? Examples of, because our sustainability, where does that come in? Well, mostly fiscal and operations, but potentially externals. So maybe a statement in each, you know, examples of promoting and, you know, living our city values would be good for every category to help prompt us to think of those things.
Yeah, nice point. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That was one ad I was going to suggest. So.
Just on item 6, it looks like, just for your own, as you're putting that together, it looks like it's missing a word, just under creates and maintains culture, proactive outreach and innovation. Looks like there's a word missing or something. Anyway.
Culture of, I think it's a culture of proactive outreach and innovation potentially. So, yeah.
But, yeah, other than that, it was like brilliant, just brilliant.
I think we took it from the job description we created, position description.
Well, one of the things that you know, I just don't know the definition of, in the context that it's in, is stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders. And I can probably come to a definition of that, but I'm just not clear what an internal stakeholder is.
So that's a great point. You know, internal being staff mostly, right? External people who are not actually, and I think we didn't call it staff because we were also talking about volunteers, boards, commissions, things like that. But I will tell you that I was recently trained by the Oregon Department of Education that stakeholder is, there are better words for that because stakeholder and the origins of that word do not equate with our diversity, equity, and inclusion value, that it is a historically set up to segregate people of owning land and wealth as opposed to others. So I'll have to look at my ODE book to see what the alternate options are. So that's a potential one that draws my attention. But yeah, I think that's the intent. John was working with our internal folks versus the outward facing relations.
Yeah, actually, I look, Madam Mayor, that was a good point. I've got it in Google. It says those who hold the money for betters. So, yeah, either way, it's just good idea to change that word. So, thank you. Yeah.
So just welcome. I'm just going to welcome Councillor Belts and make sure that Phyllis notes that she was able to join us after ably representing the Chamber of Commerce at a very busy new student event for Western Oregon students, over 350 students. And so thanks for representing over there and thanks for joining us. We are on the item about our city manager and city attorney evaluations. So thanks. Go ahead, John.
Just that, you know, I mean, the inward facing versus outward facing relations. I mean, I think that's what we're really talking about. And so however you can craft that, and you know, I just never understood what that word meant. And I don't care about the origin of it. I just didn't understand it. So that was the only sort of dark or slightly dark cloud that I had.
Is it fair to say internal just means anybody who works for the city and external means residents?
Residents and vendors and colleagues and, you know, all of those. Obviously lots and lots of external relations.
I chose residents as the quick and dirty term to use for everybody who doesn't work for the city.
Yeah, I think, well, we mentioned in it legislators, we specifically call out Western Oregon University because of our, you know, focus on that town-gown relationship. So I think in the exemplar things, I think it kind of shows what we're talking about if we just call it internal and external relations. If there are other sort of specific comments on the city manager evaluation, I'll be glad to take those now or over time. You know, I'm kind of setting this up a little bit ahead. October was when we were really going to talk about the process and how we were going to do things and get it handed out. So I still sort of plan to stick to that timeline. So this isn't final tonight. So if you have other thoughts about it, we could certainly discuss them. Yep, go ahead, John.
Just that this might be, you know, for the group, you know, as I looked at the schedule that Phyllis put together with the city attorney beginning in January and ending in March, and the city manager beginning in October and ending in December, I wonder if we should flip those. A large part of the city manager's job performance related to all of it has to do with fiscal management, and whether it's with dealing with those internal folks or the outward facing folks. Budget is an important part of it, and we're really just at the halfway point if we begin our discussion or end our discussion in December. So unless there's a reason for that, and then but the city attorney doesn't have the same tie to the fiscal stability of the city. So that would be fine to me to go October to December, you know, the calendar year, and force the city, push the city attorney or the city manager into a little more respectful relationship with the fiscal year. Just a thought.
That's a good thought. I'm going to say this. I think typically, potentially the reason to complete the city manager review before the end of December, twofold. One, there's an election every couple of years in November, and you could be starting off with a newer crew in January, and that would not be fair to have that particular group evaluate the city manager. Not great for the city attorney either, but certainly not for the city manager. Phyllis has her hand up. I'm going to call her in 1 second. I recall the other reason that we did this was if we were going to tie any kind of salary increase for the city manager, we wanted to be sure that was up front in the budget process for the following year. So Phyllis, what do you remember about that process?
I remember that we changed it sometime because we did get new people in and they had no clue how to evaluate the city manager because they just had started. But that's been quite a few years ago. I just don't remember when. Maybe when John was mayor.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
I sort of have that recollection, Phyllis. I'm almost wondering if it was right after I finished when we got a new bunch of folks in. I don't know.
We did this timeline when I was on council, so,
Okay.
but I think we implemented it when I was on council.
And I was wondering about, you know, and it's obviously too late this year, but John's idea, attorney first, but keeping Martin, you know, the city manager's evaluation where it is on the calendar. In other words, move the attorney to a July, August, September timeframe, early in the fiscal year and before new people come on in an election year and so on. Just throwing it out there, you know, I will not have my feelings hurt when this one gets shot down.
You know, I'm not really super strong on this because we've done it this way and it was done purposefully. But I think that if we, you know, I guess it's going to be every 2 years that you're going to have that potential for a new group coming. I don't know. It just seems that we are sort of, and I wouldn't say we're ignoring it, but we're not going to have good data on the fiscal management piece, as good as we would be if we were closer to the end.
Well, we'd be evaluating from the full calendar year almost, or from the October before we would fail most. So you'd basically have 12 months each time you do it.
I think that's the other thing that we that ought to be noted more clearly is what is that time frame? You know, they both say 21, and the calendar year. There's just a bit of confusion there, which can be solved with discussion. But if there's a way to include that, then it might be historically, and for the archival record, it might be better to have a defined date.
Okay, that's a good point. We could put that each year at the top, sort of remember these dates. So again, not to cut off discussion about the city manager piece, and we can always go back, and I will take additional input as you think through those sort of prompts. Or even overall, the major sections, right? So if you look at this and say, council relations, internal relations, external relations, executive management, personal traits, and leadership, are those the right 6 buckets? Or if you have some other thoughts, but this was kind of where we settled on after reviewing the position description that we created. So if you have other thoughts, let me know. Going back to the city attorney then, this, if folks agree, this also, I mean, we're rating highly skilled professionals here, right? This is a very different type of job evaluation even than some of us do in our day-to-day work. So if everyone is feeling like they would like to see this follow the same format, we have 5, potentially 6 buckets, and give more prompts about what we think we want to see, what we find helpful, what moves us forward in those buckets. I would, entertain some help with that. If somebody sort of wants to join with me, and we could draft some of that to bring back to everybody, and do a little bit more work on that, because really all we have is a phrase at best for each one. And if we wanted to flesh that out just a bit, we could. or do we need these buckets? I think we've talked before about court activities. Sorry, Lane, you never go to court for us. I've certainly, I think we all put, not observed on that, so.
Yeah, and of course, keeping you out of court is one of my primary objectives. We do, of course, municipal court. I contract that. I review the prosecuting attorney. I touch base with him periodically during the year. But you're right, I don't have any direct involvement. I think your biggest flag there would be if you heard that things were going haywire in the municipal court because things weren't being attended to. But other than that, there's not a lot of court action here, which you can be thankful for. I certainly am.
We are, but I don't know how we would judge it if you are, right? The two things there: provide timely and effective representation of our interest in litigation, which isn't court yet, hopefully, and then, ensures effective prosecution of municipal court matters. And again, I'm not sure we would know. I'm sure we could find other places to put that, right?
One of the thoughts that I had, sorry, but in on somebody, I think we could use a little more explanation of the buckets, as you call them, Madam Mayor. As I look at number 2, professionalism, that doesn't, and then I read opinions, legislation, briefs, and other works, high quality, and is respected by the legal municipal law profession. That speaks to something, but doesn't, and it doesn't really speak to professionalism. To me, we may want to tease that out by, sort of, that's more professionalism technical, as opposed to professionalism personal, for example. There's better words, but and then those are hit somewhere again down the list. So I think we would be remiss if we didn't ask Lane what sort of feedback, what form of feedback would you prefer? You just heard a discussion on the city manager, and then this is different than that. This is the Oberst model. Which would you find most helpful?
Well, I guess this is the one I know. It's the only one we've ever used. Of course, what usually happens is after I've stepped out, we come back and we have a conversation about it. And so to me, it's always been kind of a best of both worlds. There's a little bit of the numerical ranking there. I'm sort of like Councilor Oberst in there. I can relate to that, but I do appreciate that this always includes that element of just conversation after you've gone through that process. So to me, it seems to have a balance of both elements, but it's your tool. So I'm happy with whatever you choose.
It may be our tool, but we're applying it to you, Lane. So.
Yeah, well, like I say, it for my purposes, it's worked, but it's up to you to decide if it's worked for you.
So one of the things that stands out on this for me is must comment a score of 1 or 5, and we had a real problem with the old format where people were marking up 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 without a comment to be seen anywhere. And I'm wondering if we change this and say comments required, and you have a numerical score and a requirement to write something down that it reinforces why you are giving that score. Does that approach
that doesn't
what I was asking for earlier? I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't help us with norming the score. So you still have people, right, ranking 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and somebody else calling that exact same work a 5, 5, 5. So, which is probably easy with objective work standards, and I'm not sure we have very objective work standards in this case.
So if we were only making a decision based on numerical scores, I would concur that it's a problem that we don't have a clear standard that everybody uses. But if we're also basing it on written comments and conversation, it becomes a multifaceted tool. That's all. That's why the reason I feel like you can kind of, the numerical system helps structure what it is exactly you're thinking about as you go into the written part. And it does for me. So I'll just do it for myself, and y'all can do whatever you want. Give me a form to work with, and I'll work with it. You'll get a bunch of numbers from me, Cease, and you can throw them out.
Yes, Counselor Bells.
I've also found, since I've been doing this a while, and John, you've been doing this a while, and John, you've been doing this a while, it's actually a whole lot easier to kind of find examples and come up with comments and give something that's constructive. My first year or two, I'm like, yeah, Lane, he shows up at meetings. So, I mean, it was much more difficult. So in some ways, I think the three of us and probably Chris, we probably have a more to offer when it comes to comments. So comments are good, but I think to expect them of everybody may just be forcing something that's just not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I would add to that, he's good at reminding us when we approach the line that we can't cross. But other than that, you're right, Counselor Belts. I'm like, okay, what would I say here? So I agree.
Yes, go ahead. Continue.
And I wonder if some of it is, we see Marty interacting more because of the work that she does, and then we meet with her once a month, or sometimes more than that. And so there's more data because we have better data to put into a narrative because of that. While I think with Lane, we have really, for me, very narrow snapshots of comments, observations that I have.
Well, that's why I think if we flesh out the prompts a little bit, make sure that we're really reflecting what are our expectations of him or of any attorney, I'm sorry, and get some of those prompts, that'll help us really understand what the role is, for one thing, and sort of rework this a little bit. So.
Adam, are you looking for compositional assistance on the points?
Yeah, what I'm thinking of doing is actually stealing comments from past evaluations and say, oh, here's some gold standards of what we're looking for, and then flesh these out a little bit.
Okay. Well, if you need an editor or a contributor, let me know. I won't answer your call for the next few days, but after that, I'll be back. So
I won't be calling you. I have auditors coming to my work soon. I'm not going to be talking to anybody. Yes, John.
Well, one of the things that we might want to add a bit more to beef this up and to bring up and bring those new people up to speed more quickly is to be a little more detailed in what he does or what the city attorney does. I mean, normally you would, if we don't hear from if we don't hear from him, that's a good thing. And so there's not much to evaluate unless we look back at the fact that he has written the ordinance, or that he has written that we're voting on, or counsel against. And there's some things that might miss the casual look, casual observer that is very much worth noting and worth commenting on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, looking through here for example. You know, a lot of let's see, opinions, legislation, briefs, other work is of high quality, but really talking about how a lot of times we say, hey, this is kind of what we want to do. Lane has to go try to find how to say that in a way that gets where we want to go. So I think, yeah, that's a great prompt to add some more words to that, right?
These, I don't remember, has the city manager or department heads ever filled out one of these evaluations? I don't mean to make it any more cumbersome, but you know, probably 80 to 90% of my work is done at the staff level, advising staff, department heads on a day-to-day basis. The council meetings, kind of the tip of the iceberg, and you know, most of my work is done below the level of the council. And so, you know, you may want to kind of a 360 kind of approach here and include a couple of staff people in this as well. I'd be happy for you to do that.
Yeah,
and they would bring a perspective to the work that you don't see.
Right.
You know, mostly because it's good that you don't, because most of these things get handled at the staff level.
I suggested a 360 for a manager right after I started, and that got so thoroughly shot down it wasn't even funny. So the fact that you are willing to subject yourself to that, Lane, is you know, startling. But it's also not unexpected, because I know the quality of work you do, and it would be appreciated if you're game to do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Janet pipes back in. Yep. Phyllis too. So that's a great idea. I can work with staff, with Marty and staff, to kind of figure out what a process would be for that, how to get some feedback included. That's an excellent idea. And if Phyllis and Janet think it's good, hey. And Roxanne, go ahead.
So this is going to show how badly I remember things I've read. Do we ever get a summary every year of, you know, Lane wrote 18 amendments for us and 26? I mean, not that I want it to be that detailed, but that might be something that city staff could kind of help remind us of everything he did for a year.
Yay, numbers.
If we have them put in input about the kinds of work they did with him, yeah, that's, I mean, rather than numbers, but.
Yeah, I would do the number of ordinances that you've called for. That really isn't a measure so much of my productivity as it is yours.
Yeah, thanks.
which I mean, just to say that may not, you know, some of these things may or may not be useful, but I do think that the 360 would probably be useful for you to see how staff interacts with me on a more day-to-day kind of basis. Because I'll bet I'm in touch with staff probably 3 days a week at one level or another.
Wow.
I just know that information would be very helpful. Again, it doesn't have to be, I had 862 contacts, but just for us to know all of that, of what, and I'm going back to my Chariots days as a program manager. I reported to my board of directors. They had no idea how much work I did and what I did and how many meetings I went to. And so that's all I'm trying to get, is I think it will help us get a handle on what it is that you do and how much of.
Then too, and again, you can winnow this down to something more manageable. I mean, you could also look at my billing statements every month that summarize the activities on a day-to-day basis. So that would tell you in pretty granular detail what I do. Maybe more than you need to see, but that's at least, that's a record that's out there.
I think just knowing he talks to our staff 2 or 3 times a week is something we didn't know. So there you go. So with permission then, maybe I will work on this a little bit, see if I can find what those buckets are and pull some more things in. What do you think about that timeline? Councilor Carey mentioned maybe move the city attorney evaluation to sort of that July, August, September timeframe, rather than, again, if you have a new council coming in January, having any role in evaluation being a little difficult. certainly after 6 months, most people would get a sense of this, but
I think that would be fine if we wanted to move it to the summer months. I'm fine with it either way. I think that what we're talking about, the 360 and adding that detail, I think it's going to improve this assessment either way. So having those specific examples and prompts and that information, I'm excited to find out, a lot of what, Lane does for our city. I think that's really important for us to know and to get that big picture. And so I think once we have that information, January or July would be fine. So I'm fine with either of those timelines. And so I won't fight you either way. I think we'll get great information regardless of when we do this.
thanks, John.
So when I first started as mayor, we actually, as a council, also evaluated the judge, which was, I made a point of going to a couple of days of court to watch, but I think I was the only one who did. And we've evaluated the attorney for years based on this little snapshot we get every 2 weeks of what the attorney does. And so I think that, it's always been a stretch for me of how do we evaluate the attorney when we really don't see what's going on. And so, Lane, again, that you would bring that up and say your game, I think it's a fabulous approach. And again, if 6 months is enough for newbies to get a feel of what Lane does, and especially if they're handed some statistics and some staff evals too, I think, there's something to be said for not having it be the first thing they do when they get on council. So
Yeah, taking me out of it, the more you know about what your city attorney is doing, the better job you can do.
Okay, I think I have some guidance on these two to rework and kind of spice up a little bit and get back out to you so we can get back on track with this. We've kind of been lax on that a little bit. So thank you very much for that robust discussion. Our only other item this evening, and I'm sorry this didn't go out with the packet, I just sent you out today some additional information about our boards and commissions. Phyllis has prepared for us the current vacancies. And so, so we have not yet reappointed the budget committee members who requested reappointment. So we have a total of 3 openings there. We have 1 opening on our library board, 2 on Parks and Rec, 1 on the senior advisory board, and 5 on the tree board. They are unable to meet as a quorum. We are down to 2 members of that board. So first of all, just a reminder that those openings are there. And then what I sent out to you to review sort of a discussion about board and commission, not recruitment, but recruitment, and which values this really touches on for us, but it actually touches on all 3. So our stated goal in 2021, when we discussed ways to increase interest in boards and commissions, our stated goal was to increase the diversity of voices, gender, age, length of time in the community, and experience, and appoint members who understand the role of the committee or commission when they're appointed. So I went through, I attached the application. We talked about changes last time, and we made some of those. We talked about recruitment, screening, and I just want to evaluate how we've done against our goals of recruiting more and diverse voices. We also talked a little bit about onboarding last time, so I want to kind of bring that up again. So for the first of all, The I included our appointment process draft that we had talked about. We had talked about adding some additional questions about living in town, working in town, owning property in the city limits, an occupation, some additional demographic information. We have not added those to the application. We did add a statement that says application does not guarantee appointment or reappointment. We did get that added. That is currently on the application. I think. No, maybe it's not. I thought it was. It's not. So that we didn't get that added. So what do we think about adding some of those questions?
I recall this, but I don't recall the reason that we included it under the add section.
Yes.
I think we may be eliminating, well, my question is about owning property in the city limits. That if that's going to be a decider, students would probably be out of that. Other renters would be disadvantaged by that.
I think the only reason for that one, John, is because, right, we only have so many seats for people who do not live, work, or own property in the city limits.
And in fact, as I recall, and Lane, correct me on this, but the non-resident position on planning still has to own property in Monmouth.
No, I don't recall offhand.
Okay, that's just my recollection of that particular position. So we have right now someone who does not live in town but owns apartments in town who's serving on the planning commission. And if those apartments were suddenly sold, I think that person would be disqualified. But
John, I don't believe that's still a qualification. I don't think that's a qualification at all.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
The non-resident on planning, there's no special qualification, or there is, but it's not that.
Okay, that was just what I recall.
Yeah, there isn't, to the best of my knowledge.
No, it just the code addresses a non-resident member may be appointed when the mayor and council determine the individual has special qualifications and expertise in the subject matter of the commission and has expressed interest in being appointed and serving and advancing the interests of the city. Yeah, that's the only criterion around the issue of non-resident member.
Yeah, I thought it had to have some, so special knowledge or expertise.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. It could be that it's the old ordinance that I'm remembering, because we did update this a few years back.
So I think that's why we talked about just adding that piece. Currently, Phyllis does screening to determine if the person's address is in the city limits or not when she's trying to decide for us if that person is qualified by residency. But and
well, as I look and read this, I can get close enough to my screen. Do you live in the city? That would be valuable information to have. Do you work in the city? Yes. I don't know about owning property in the city limits. I'm troubled by that, frankly.
I don't know that that's a criterion for membership in any of the boards or commissions.
Well, I know, but this is suggested possible added language.
Yeah.
It's my point.
I thought there was some, I wouldn't have thought of it either, but I thought it came up as that could qualify them even if they didn't live here. Kind of like maybe what John was thinking about.
Oh, I see.
I thought there was something about even if you didn't live here, if you own property here, and maybe I was thinking of the old planning thing too. So I think that's fine about crossing out the owning property piece if it doesn't help us determine qualification that might not otherwise be apparent.
Right.
And working in the city doesn't qualify or disqualify anyone necessarily, but so we may or may not want to ask that.
Well, for the Economic Development Commission, that does include members shall reside in or own and or be employed by a business within the city. So there is an element of employment there for the Economic Development Commission, but I think that's the only one.
Yeah.
Do we officially have that commission at this point? Or
I'm
is
not
it,
sure that you do.
right, it's aspirational at this point.
Doesn't matter. If
Right.
we want to.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Lane, for that. So if we want to add those in, and we could put a saying, this does not necessarily qualify you or disqualify you for being on it. We talked about occupation. Don't know, that's helpful for some, right? It helps give us information about their expertise. Most people end up putting that into the question, which is what experience and expertise do you have that is relevant? So we maybe don't need to make it a separate question. Okay. And then optional demographic information. Again, this was our discussion about helping us learn about whether or not folks were potentially to help us gain diversity. There's mixed advice right now about adding optional demographic information unless you are collecting it for some particular purpose. What do y'all think about that?
I like if we are trying to see if there's if we're reaching different populations. I think people have a choice whether or not to mark that in many ways. And I don't know if we're collecting that type of information just to inform ourselves. For me, it's very interesting so that it helps us to see, do we have a good balance? Like in the Historic Commission, we have a really nice balance. We're almost half and half, male and female. Our ages are, varied as well. The expertise is it's pretty cool. And so, but I also don't know if it seems to me like because we need people in these commissions, that if we get an application and we're like, they show an interest and they interview and they're willing to serve, demographically, the information is interesting, but I don't think it's going to make our decision yes or no. Like, we're not going to go, sorry. So
we wouldn't want to make a decision based on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think for information, it's interesting, but I think our goal is I think it's our responsibility and everyone else's, just to try to get as much interest as possible. But I'm under the premise that if somebody wants to serve and they have good intentions to serve, they're not coming in because they have a beef with the city. They're coming in because they really have, and that's hard to measure. I think that's really kind of our goal, right? And so, the demographic piece is interesting, but what I'm afraid of, because we're in such a chaotic environment, that people are going to look at that and go, wait a minute, what do you mean you need this information? I think we can maybe make it voluntary, but
it would be completely optional. But
yeah, exactly. Because really, if you're willing and your heart's in the right place, of course we're gonna reach your application and hope that you serve, right? So I guess that's my 2 cents on that piece.
Thanks. I just want to point out in the chat, Janet just mentioned too, the budget committee is the one committee that requires be a voting resident of Monmouth. So
Yeah, that's a requirement of state law.
that's state law. So that's always one we're going to have to not only verify their residency, but whether or not they're a registered voter.
Okay. So, Cease, is our goal to have just one application that can be used for all these boards and commissions? Is that the goal? Because it sounds like there's maybe little tweaks here and there for the others. Is that?
Well, I think those are not necessarily tweaks in the application. In the list of boards and commissions, we want to make clear, I think, looking at budget committee, it doesn't say it. So that would be one we could add in the description of the committee, must be registered voter in Monmouth, for example.
Each one of your board and commission code series has the membership section that you could extract to include on that application.
Okay. Thanks.
So one quick observation, the current application dates to the age of paper, and more we're using electronic applications, and I think we can expand beyond 2 pages if we have to get everything we want in. I want to, and yeah, Phyllis, I bet people still fill it out on paper, don't they?
But the online form is a fillable form.
Okay.
It is. Yep.
So, and Rebecca, your comment about if people want to serve, I'm going to remind the council that in my 10 years as mayor, I had a month and a half where I had every seat on all boards and commissions filled. And we filled the last one, and a month and a half later, somebody resigned from a different board, and we were back to having vacancies. I think we have a goal of trying to increase diversity, being that we have holes that we're filling. I don't know that other than having a conscious, let's go out and try to recruit, let's spread the word that we would like to see more diversity and get people we know to apply. I'm just not sure that putting demographic information on the application is going to drive the goal that we have for this process.
Yeah, it would not. Asking the questions certainly doesn't drive the interest. And yeah, we're absolutely going to talk about recruiting for a minute, although I just kind of wanted to be done and didn't want to keep y'all too late tonight, so I don't want to talk about it too much more. But yeah, you're right, John. It would just be a matter of collecting, and particularly if we need to make, if we're having all members refill out an application each time their term comes up, we would collect more of that data for ourselves to be able to report on how are we doing against our diversity goals. So
that's what I was thinking of. Is it sounds like what we really want to know is how diverse are the commissions, not we need to get, we know what we need to get on the commissions, but we can track who we know is on the commissions year after year after year and try to improve upon that in terms of our recruitment and for diversity. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So I think that's a couple changes, the application process and maybe that list of the boards and commissions and sort of what they do. We can't, thanks Lane for that reference. We'll maybe pull that in for folks too. And I think really what is important, even the application process, as we say, no one's going to go to the application process unless we send them there and drive them there. So talking a little bit more about our roles, because we recently had 2 openings on the budget committee and we had 2 applications. And they were people who were former mayors and very familiar with the city and the process. And what's our role in expanding that market, expanding that pool? We've got to figure out how we're going to step up our game to build our farm team, right? To get more folks in the pipeline on these boards and commissions, get some more experience and diversity in there. So I really kind of want to think through if anybody has had great success in recruiting people. Do you have any tips for us? Where do we go to look for these people? How do we approach them?
I have some suggestions. I think we have to be very purposeful, and we have to be really smart in where we're advertising. For example, budget committee, targeting accountings and CPAs and Western's accounting department, and like thinking about what do we want someone who understands numbers, budget process in the area, and then how do we, yes, we advertise to everybody, but then we just make it a point, hey, have you seen this advertisement? It's on our website. Or, do you have people who are interested? And be really purposeful about how we're doing that. I think more information is needed. What do you do on budget committee? What do you do on what do they do on historic committee? What does the arts and culture committee do? And giving even like specific examples. I really like that idea up there about the video. So if somebody goes to the website, there's a video under each board and commission, and that says, oh, you're interested in volunteering, click here. And there's somebody, who represents that commission that's talking about, hi, this is who we are. This is what we've done. This is how you can help. And there's a lot of info, because it says in there, have you read the packet? Have you done this? Okay. Unless you really are excited about reading that information, it could lose you within that first page. Done. But I think if you have someone who is currently serving that creates this information, I just think we lack information, and we lack really thinking about how far are we reaching, where do we want this advertisement to go, what conversations do we want to have. So, and yes, all of our time is busy. I get that, and that's true. But those are just some ways, like in the education area, when I just kind of go for it if I'm looking for people, or if I want participation, and go have those conversations and do kind of that targeting. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think, we came up with the videos last time because of John's observations when he was in Hawaii about how they tell people this is how government works, kind of thing. But it's not, none of us raised our hand and said, hey, yeah, I'd love to help figure out how to do that. And we didn't have a ton of staff to say, gee, somebody want to raise their hand to do this? We cannot assign work to our new communications person, but she will start October 1st. And, we can, I think, does everyone know who our new communications person is? We have hired Sabra Jewell as our communications manager. So Sabra currently works at Western Oregon University. She's in the foundation. She is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, vice president of the Monmouth Independence Community Foundation. She is very well connected in the community, and a ball of fire.
And a heck of a nice person too. And she knows how to talk right.
Yes.
Weird accents. Sabra will be she's starting with us October 1st. So I'm not going to say that we can decide that this might be a good priority for her, but I certainly hope that we can see if we can get it up there, right? I think one of the huge advantages, particularly for Sabra personally, she's very connected already to the campus, right? And so I think when we talked about this before, really saw it as maybe an opportunity to have students or, have public, public policy management class, right? Something like that really help us with this. And so her
Oh, you froze up. See,
start
there you
this
go.
a little better than we could have ourselves.
No, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I could totally see Sabra doing videos and doing that outreach and having bilingual options. Like if we have them in English and Spanish, I mean, we're just going to look really awesome because we're doing these. So that's really nice to hear. I think that will help us really move this forward.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, somebody's going to have to volunteer to maybe write a blurb. And maybe if one of us wrote one for our board and commission, it would set a template that the rest of us could work with our staff liaison or our board chairs on the boards and commissions to help them craft what it is. So if we create the template, what is the commission? What do we do? How do you be successful on this kind of thing? Whatever that template is. Do you have a thought?
Would that involve more than what's already in each ordinance that says the one paragraph in each one that says this is what the board and commission is tasked with?
So that's the thing. Got to look at that, and that's the legal. So then we want to make it fun. So how do we put it in one paragraph and make it jazz it up, right? So yes, could be easily the source for what is your job, but not referring people to that document.
Yeah. No, and what Phyllis was saying, that would be great, and then maybe giving some examples. For example, this is what we did this year, or like Historic Commission, filming it in front of the new mural with the in October or whenever, November, it's going to be done in October, and there's like something tangible. But that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear what Carol has to say.
Yes, as from the tree board that has like no people, only 2 people. We've done this purposeful type of recruiting. We sent an email to the OSU gardeners asking if anybody wants to join. We had it it's lots of fun. I've taken donuts, we'll feed you, and we can't get them. We've actually sent out emails to OSU faculty who are in biology. We've put flyers up in the student union to say, hey, come and join us with that. We have sent emails to OSU faculty asking, because some of the OSU students are in Monmouth, so we're trying to get OSU students there. Nothing has worked at all. So we've been doing this it's not like we're just sitting back thinking they'll come to us. And even with purposeful recruiting and donuts, we can't seem to get any action.
What you need, Carol, is a video of a tree planting, because that's going to make people say, that looks like fun, and they'll turn out. Yeah. That's the most fun about the tree board is those tree plantings. It's a hoot.
I would agree. That's the only thing we haven't done is the video, and I like the video idea. But I'm wondering, right now, we don't consistently put a notice in the newsletter with the utility bill. And when we do have a notice, it's in the back and it's tucked in with all the other stuff. And so people have to be looking for it. What if we change where we put that information about we need more board members? And so sorry to use up some of your space, Madam Mayor, but what if we put it at the top before your report starts so that it's front and center? When somebody opens it up, it's right there.
Well, don't tell Phyllis this because it was due last Friday, but I haven't finished my mayor's notes. But my topic this month is community engagement. So guess what?
Yeah.
So I do already have a short article in there about the vacancies that we have.
I'll just talk about how fun they are, and then
okay.
I'll say, turn over to see opportunities.
And the tree board has donuts. I mean, what?
So that is one thing, the tree board I want to mention is that the tree board is very important for us to maintain our Tree City USA status. And so that one is like just as important in some ways as the budget committee. So it really does need to get filled.
And it doesn't have to be botanist, right? So that's the other thing. People like trees.
One of the problems we've got is that not everybody is taking their electric bill in the mail the old-fashioned way, and it's all getting paid online, and they don't see mayor's notes, community notes, unless we have their email address and we can send something to them. So there's a slice of the community that's not seeing that stuff anymore.
John, they get an e-newsletter with their online bills.
Okay.
I wonder if it'd be helpful to have a contact person for each of the boards. So I'd be fine if somebody wanted to contact me and to say, hey, I'm interested in the tree board, because it relies now on people like going to the website, checking it out. But instead of doing the website, what if we just say, hey, contact this person who will tell you about the whatever board or commission?
Well, currently on any time I put an article in, I'll say, contact me for more information, which means I could, send them off to you or somebody else, but people will do that occasionally if they're interested.
Yeah, never mind. It's not working then anyway. If you have your contact in there.
I do.
No, I didn't mean it like that. That came out wrong. Well,
thanks, Carol. So for me, I have recruited people for the Arts and Culture Commission because when I look at them and they say, oh, I like this, or something to do with art, I'll say, have you considered being on the commission? And I've had several people become members because of that. So one-on-one seems to work. Just a thought.
Yeah, definitely does.
We just need to rename the tree board. That's just a boring name. We need to name it something much more sexy and fun,
The Keepers of Tree City USA, the Guardians of Trees.
Green Leaf Society, maybe.
Well, I think also taking advantage of opportunities. I know this Saturday at the celebration for a table and bringing information about this is what we have to offer and this is how you can volunteer. And I still think if we're somehow able to have like a space, if people are just willing to volunteer for the city, maybe they don't know they want to be on a board yet. maybe they don't know about it, that we have a place that they can sign up to be volunteers. And then we can say, hey, you want to be a volunteer? Here's all this opportunity and boards and commissions. I don't know. But that's, taking advantage of stuff. Because like Phyllis was saying, having those conversations, I think is important too. But yeah, it's going to take work and effort. And we can do this. Go team. Let's not give up. We'll fill these vacancies.
Well, I think getting, maybe like say, I'm going to challenge each of you, if you have a few minutes, to say, what would you want to tell people about the board or commission you're a liaison to in a way that makes it sound fun and interesting? And if somebody comes up with a great one, just give it to me and I'll kind of maybe say, yeah, this secretly, I won't tell you whose was the best, but maybe start kind of using that as an outline we can all use. Because I think having the thing that's on the website tells when the meeting is, how long the term is, and what their, provides direction on the operation and maintenance of the senior center, as well as development and implementation of recreation programs for seniors. Okay, so I can use that. What's a way I can really talk about, like you say, what was on our agenda? What have they actually accomplished? What are some things we can do to show what that feels like and looks like? And if we just each kind of came up with 5 sentences, 6 sentences, doesn't have to be much, figuring, we'll see who has the most enticing and interesting board and commission recruitment strategy. And John Kerry, there's no way you make planning sound fun, so
Oh, contrary-wise, Madam Mayor.
8 ideas already, and I'm patient. Right.
And if
This
things
was,
turn out great, we'll make videos of them and we'll be good to go. So
you know,
unless there are final comments, I'm gonna leave this at that. The other thing be starting to think about, typically every year in January of an odd numbered year, we switch up our board and commission assignments. And so be thinking about those who you might be interested in getting to know more about. So I'm going to call this good unless you have other thoughts, or if you do afterwards, direct them to me only, and we'll see if we can't keep our focus on this, because it really is one of our best ways of community engagement, and we need to build a group of people who are ready to continue and commit to service in our community. So thanks, this was helpful. Any other comments we need to hear? John Oberst?
Not on this. I have a council comment.
This is council comment. Council comments.
Edge.
Moving on.
So, just a quick report about what's going on with parks. They had their small parks tour. I haven't gotten a report. I'll let you know later. We had our last grant. No, I just got to tell you this because it ends with a biggie. Okay. We got our last grant done. And speaking of grants, of which we asked the state parks for a bunch of money to do the S-Curve Park, a final decision has been reached and we got it. So between the money for the skate park and this grant, we have gotten over $1 million to put into the thoroughly underdeveloped S-Curve Park. And I think it would be wonderful to say it's going to be done by the end of next summer, but in reality, it'll probably be the summer after before it's all done. I think the skate park's first and then get on everything else. So, but it's coming. Pickleball, Carol. So yes, I got that from Russ this afternoon and I was just thrilled. I had to tell y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff.
Wow, pretty exciting. Too bad we won't have trolleys, but quite yet, but
all in good time, Madam Mayor, all in good time. I was in Walla Walla. They've got trolleys that look just like what we've ordered and they're fabulous. People love them.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can at least get one in the Christmas, the tree lighting parade. Let's hope if we could at least have one, I think we'll be good. So, all right, any other final comments? Otherwise, Councilor McKeel.
Yes, I just don't want anybody to forget that this Saturday, September 24th, noon to 5, take it away, Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Please come and enjoy the festivities, the food, the music, the dancing. Come dance from 3 to 5. But I hope that you come and enjoy a lot of family fun and music and activities. So it's from 12 to 5, Main Street Park. And please come anytime you want between 12 and 5. So hope to see you there.
We also have the kids' art is up. I have 2 more into Independence. We have Monmouth Elementary School, Ash Creek Elementary School, and Independence Elementary School. So probably like 20 classrooms this year. So for the kids, the teacher read a story from an Hispanic, a Latino, or Latina author. And so we have that picture up in the storefront along with a color picture of the book cover and then surrounded by the kids' art. It's really cute. So come to the festival or celebration this Saturday and then go look at all the kids' art downtown.
And I'm sorry to say I'll be out of town.
Yes, Counselor Belts.
I don't know if you mentioned it, Mayor Kuntz. Did you mention about History and Mystery in Monmouth on the 30th? So not this Friday, but next Friday, downtown, 7 o'clock. Go to Main Street Park, pick up a map. There are 8 locations where there will be people telling stories, not ghost stories, but stories that either have a historical aspect or sort of a mystery aspect of them. And I'm not telling a story there, but the next day I will be at the Independence Ghost Walk, and I will be telling a ghost story right in front of what used to be one of the many hardware stores in front of Valkyrie. So please, if you're not busy, come down and visit. They're both free events for both cities.
Before we adjourn, I know several of us know this. Councilor Lopez is not with us this evening. As you did know, his father was diagnosed with a terminal illness recently, and he passed away Saturday morning. Councilor Lopez was excused this evening. He hopes to be joining us again soon, but if you see him, please let him know how much we support him and wish him whatever time he needs to take care of things for his family. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Oh,
Thank you.
So
Councilor
quick-
Oberspiel. Yes.
One quick thing after, I will be getting a plant and a card in the name of the city and all of us tomorrow.
Thank you, Phyllis.
thank you. Thank you, Phyllis.
Right. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
I
Hi. Good to see everybody. Thank you.
You too. Take good care of yourselves.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Good night.
Night.
Thanks for the hard work.